Hey guys, Matt here with another HUNDEGNI video analysis. Today we're going over HUNDEGNI underscore 2.4. There's a lot to say in this video, even though it is very short. The first thing I should note just right off the bat is that this was published on December 31st. Obviously that is correlated to Christmas time, so once again the theme of holidays comes up. This video is also, of course, in a very high quality, which is what we're going to be watching it in. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start playing this right off the bat so we can get started. Alright, so pausing right there, you can hear the subject 2 carried over from the previous video of HUNDEGNI underscore 2.3. We'll talk about subject 2 a little bit more towards the end of this video because I think that does have a very big part of this overall HUNDEGNI series. You're also going to hear the sound of static, and this of course all fades in sort of from a red light. So there's a brief pause in the video with the whoever this is that we're watching kind of looking to their right, and then it kind of cuts away really fast. And if we're going to take that for all that it's worth in that first scene, it would seem to like it has a lot of parallels, I think, with HUNDEGNI underscore 2.2, where everything kind of fades in from white and you see the character see the butterfly and they look over to the left. This time it's more of a look over to the right side, so there's something there that needs to be seen. And you probably noticed some of those particles floating up. This is obviously not like a real thing, not a real place being shown in this video, but rather something created in some sort of game engine, which is an interesting thing that we're noticing. Both 2.2 and 2.4, they're very closely related in that way. And we'll talk about theories regarding some sort of game engine, perhaps in a future video, because I don't think I can sum all that up in this one, because there just is so much that needs to be talked about. Anyways, so it's still kind of blurry, but slowly, if I can pause this at the right time, we can see that this little black box actually contains something kind of interesting. Okay. So if you pause it at about the right time as things start to become less hazy, you can see that that is an SUBJ, and I'm very certain that that is a 2. So if you were to take that for all that it's worth, that stands for subject 2. So once again, we're seeing that phrase now being carried over into this video and appearing on this sign. And just in case you need any sort of proof that this is taking place in some kind of game engine, obviously this is kind of a repeated floor texture, and the wall is also somewhat repeated if you look at it in all the right sections. But yeah, this is definitely taking place in a fake area. And if you look over here, pause at just the right time, you can actually see a screen with blue static and an avatar within a photograph. And this avatar, if we're going to take a look back over on this photo containing all of the shadows that existed throughout the investigation, you will notice that is to the max 9. Once notice his shirt, it's basically blue, and his skin tone and general hair. And now we're going to look back over here. You have that kind of white collar inlay, the shirt's the same color, short hair, and same skin tone. So that is definitely to the max 9, which sort of messes up my theory when we talked about HUNDEGNI underscore 2.3, because I said that one of the lights probably wasn't him. But we'll see in just a minute that there are still some oddities, and that not all the shadows are being represented in this video. So here it is, the money shot, if you will. There's so much that could be said about what's going on in this. There's a lot of fog in the foreground here, so it makes it kind of hard to see what's happening. But if I am to sum things up here, we'll go ahead and we'll name off the shadows or the people that appear here. In this photograph, we have DHeart67, one of the original investigators. You can't really see much of him there, it's more of a silhouette, but you can just tell based off the armor alone that he has that giant pike towards the top of his head. He dressed very differently from other shadows that we saw. that appeared. We have an empty frame. There's another empty frame over here, and we'll talk about what that might mean later on. This center photograph seems to be a Golden Shadow King. You'll notice kind of like a light blue tint right there. And just overall, I think that that would have to be him because the other shadows really don't fit his general profile. Next to him, you can see sort of the remnants of like a black kind of tank top existing there, and kind of like a longer hair existing around this portion of his face, which is King of the Sun's general look. You can see that he has a black tank top on there. He's one of the few characters to have that. Unhinged also has that, which I think is just kind of a coincidence that they both wear the same thing. Interestingly enough, Unhinged does not appear in this photograph, but we'll talk about what that might mean later on. We'll go ahead and skip this one for now, I think. Yeah, because there's a bit of an oddity there, and we'll talk about that in a second. Once again, there's 2 to the max 9, so that previous shot that we saw with 2 to the max 9 appearing just right there in that box that I'm showing you in the lower toolbar, that's where that was being filmed. We were closer to the wall at that point, but we were only seeing that particular picture frame of 2 to the max 9. But right next to him is a very difficult figure to see. The only one that kind of fits that general profile and just fits with this overall theme that we have going on here would be Trooper for Good. There he is. He wears green, and he has a very similar haircut with someone like 2 to the max 9. But since I'm very certain that that is 2 to the max 9 because we got such a good look at it earlier, then this stands to reason that that would indeed be Trooper for Good. Once again, we have this blank photograph. And then there's these last 2, and we obviously know who this is. These are actually interesting because in the last video I kind of talked about how people like the butterfly and the ninjas weren't considered shadows, but here we are with this photograph, and that seems to not be entirely true because they're included for some reason. Even though I never really considered them shadows, they were more just like a central part of Arrows of Heaven. But yeah, there's obviously XI Museum, so standing next to him, it can only stand to reason that that would be XI Continuum. And a big reason for this is just because look how shadowy that is. At least, I mean, other characters that are shadowy here, like D-Heart67, at least you can tell based off his general look, that pike on his head and the shoulder blades. And even like the other shadowy figures, you can still kind of see them if you look close enough. But then you have this, and it's just completely shadowy. You can't see anything involved with it. And that's kind of XI Continuum's entire thing. You could never see him. He was always a silhouette. And so I think that carries over here. It makes sense that they be right next to each other, if you will. So that brings us to the question of what's going on with these 2 empty photographs, and who is this figure in the upper right-hand corner? Now, the shadow that makes the most sense as that being would be this right here, which is RHK DMS, who took on multiple forms throughout the investigation. At one point, it was a girl, and another time it was a guy. And so RHK DMS is the only shadow to change appearance, which is quite odd. It's not something that's been experienced by other shadows. And if we're going to take a closer look here, it's very difficult to see, but the shirt seems to be different. We can't really tell based off this. There does seem to be a bit of black on the shoulder portion of that avatar. And around here, there also is black around where that meets the skin. So that could be a hint that this is RHK DMS, but they don't seem to be exactly the same, because you can see this large portion where the hair kind of splits. And in this photograph, you're not really seeing that. I feel like that would be something we'd be able to see. Maybe it is just hidden, though. So if I'm going to take a safe guess, I'm going to say that that is RHK DMS. I don't see why it would be anyone else necessarily, but we don't know for certain. Now, the big question, of course, is these 2 empty photographs. And if we are going to look at this list of people who are not shown, these 2 are shown, Golden Shadow King is shown, these 3 are presumably shown, and so that leaves 3, which would be General Camera, Unhinged Shadow, and the Butterfly. So I'm thinking that the Butterfly still has kind of like a higher purpose here, even though it does show these 2, so maybe this would be where the Butterfly would go, because like all the central figures of Arrows of Heaven would be in like the same row. But yeah, if I were to take a guess, I mean, I don't know that he would appear in this photograph simply because he seems like of a higher purpose. He seemed to have more life in him. He seemed more like the Suited Man overall. He kind of existed just for a short period of time. He didn't have like rules to follow necessarily like all these other people did. And I think a big part of this video of 2.4 is just rules and abiding by them and how the shadows responded to those rules. So that leaves two others, which are general camera and unhinged shadow. Both of those were obviously shadows, and I think it's most logical that they would appear in these two pictures. So the question is, why are they all hazy and why are they tapped out? There must be a connection between unhinged shadow and general camera that would cause this discrepancy to happen. What I'm thinking is that their similarities that they both kind of started to break away from the suited man. Unhinged broke away, of course, the most because, you know, he was found just like roaming around the museum, and Admiral kind of slowly talked to him, and he got a bit more normalized over time. And General Camera, very similarly, the last time any of us ever, or any of the investigators saw General Camera was when she said sorry and then disappeared, and that was the last words uttered by her. So I think that would kind of hint that she also broke away, and that's why she's not kind of like stuck or trapped in these photographs. And I think that's kind of the overall theme of this video, is like people being stuck and like trapped inside somewhere. It's all foggy and hazy, and the fog and the static kind of are one and the same, really, in that both kind of represent just an overall lost aura about them. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but you get the overall theme that like this is something that's not quite so clear anymore. They're all kind of just kind of lost in the fog, if you will. Except for these two, which are just nowhere to be seen. Their screens are empty, while these are blue. Once again, you have that kind of dormant theme going on. The rest of them are just kind of dormant, just waiting for new orders. But these two are gone entirely. They can't be ordered around anymore. And the rest of the video just kind of plays out, and you see those familiar orbs coming up from the ground. And those are white orbs. We've seen those white orbs similarly in the end portion of 2.2, where everything was black. The beginning had black orbs, but these are quite clearly more like white or gray orbs. I don't know if I can get like a good photograph of them, but I think you got a general idea of what they look like. So, I mean, I think the orbs kind of also just kind of play into this overall theme that something is wrong, that whoever is looking at these photographs, whoever it is, maybe it is the butterfly if we are going to take a few guesses here, but like they're seeing that this is just an area that, an overall like area that isn't quite all there. Like you have all this static, you have all this fog, you have these particles around. It seems like a dreamscape almost. But there is that just overall running theme of just some sort of oddity going on that is experienced by both the person looking in and the people that seem to be trapped within it. And with all that being said, now we need to talk about Subject 2, which is probably the most difficult part of all of this. I mean, there is, of course, the similarity between Subject 2 and this being HUNDEGNI 2.x, of course. So perhaps HUNDEGNI 1.x, that original 9 posts, maybe that would be Subject 1, and then eventually when we get to HUNDEGNI underscore 3.1, it'll be Subject 3. Until we do get to those videos, which could come out at any time, but until we do, I don't know if I can say anything too certain about it just yet. Maybe Subject 2 like is a specific person and it's something that is worth noting, or maybe it just is representing that we are in the 2.x series and that there's nothing deeper to it than that. Overall though, this video doesn't seem to have too many secrets as much as it does just kind of like hinting at things to come, and I definitely think that there is something about all the things that we are shown in this video that would hint that there is more to come, and there is things that need to be explained, things regarding like who some of these people are in these photographs, why some people are in these photographs even though they weren't necessarily considered shadows, where's the butterfly fall into all of this, where does the suited man fall into all of this. There's a lot to take in, and it's difficult to pinpoint everything, but for right now, that's all we know about HUNDEGNI underscore 2.5. HUNDEGNI underscore, I'm sorry, 2.4 is this one, but HUNDEGNI underscore 2.5 is actually hidden. Once again, we skipped automatically to HUNDEGNI underscore 2.6 after this was released. So I'm taking it that like every single series, if we do get to the 3.x series, I'm assuming that 3.5 will be hidden, 4.5 will be hidden. The fifth entry, I'm assuming is just always going to be hidden, only to be revealed in like a future video of the next series. So whatever is in 2.5, we won't know for some time. But we do have 2.6, which is what we will be going over in the next video. That's all for now, guys. Thanks for watching.